My name is Woody, and at 30 years old, I thought I had it all figured out. Good job as a software engineer in Seattle, my own condo. And despite living a few hours away, I still made time for family. My brother Nathan was always the favorite, but I never expected what happened next. Finding out my parents left everything to him in their will was one thing, but continuing to expect me to pay their bills, that was another level of unfair. Then came that text from Mom Electric's past due. You better handle it. I took a deep breath and replied, before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like button if you have ever felt taken for granted by family. Subscribe if you want to hear how I finally stood up for myself after years of being the responsible one who got nothing in return. I grew up in a modest 2-story house in Portland, with my parents Robert and Martha and my younger brother Nathan. From the beginning, the family dynamic was clear. Nathan could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. When he broke the living room window playing baseball inside the house, they laughed it off as boys will be boys. When I accidentally spilled juice on the carpet, I was grounded for a week for being careless. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. Nathan was the charming, outgoing one who made friends easily but struggled academically. I was quieter, more serious, and excelled in school. My report cards full of A's were met with a simple nod, and that is what we expect from you, Woody, while Nathan bringing home C's and D's resulted in celebration dinners because he tried his best. When college applications came around, I worked tirelessly to earn a partial scholarship to the University of Washington for computer science. Even with the scholarship, I had to take out substantial student loans to cover the rest. Nathan, meanwhile, barely graduated high school and decided to find himself instead of pursuing higher education. My parents fully supported his decision, funding his 6-month backpacking trip through Europe as a graduation present. While I was eating ramen noodles and working part-time at the campus IT department to make ends meet, Nathan was sending postcards from Paris and Rome. I did not begrudge him the experience. That is just who Nathan was, and in many ways I admired his free spirit. But a small part of me wished my academic achievements had been celebrated with even half the enthusiasm. After graduating with honors, I landed a job at a tech startup in Seattle. The hours were long and the work demanding. But within 5 years, I had worked my way up to senior software engineer with a comfortable 6-figure salary. I bought a small but modern condo in a nice neighborhood and established myself as financially stable. Nathan predictably struggled to find his path. He cycled through various jobs, barista tour guide, retail sales bartender, never sticking with anything longer than a few months. He moved back in with our parents at 25, promising it would be temporary. 3 years later, he was still there paying minimal rent when he remembered. Despite this stark contrast in our life trajectories, my parents continued to make excuses for Nathan. He is a creative soul, they would say. He just has not found his calling yet. Meanwhile, my career success was treated as if it had fallen into my lap, rather than being the result of years of hard work and sacrifice. Throughout all of this, I remained the dutiful son. When my dad needed dental surgery not covered by insurance, I paid the $3,000 bill without hesitation. When their roof started leaking, I flew home for a weekend to help with repairs and covered the cost of materials. I never expected repayment. They were my parents, and I was in a position to help. Things shifted slightly when Nathan met Rachel at 28. She was ambitious and driven, working in pharmaceutical sales. And for the first time, Nathan seemed to have direction. My parents adored Rachel immediately, already talking about grandchildren after just a few months of them dating. They began to fix up the house, mentioning casually how it would be a great place for a young family someday. I was genuinely happy that Nathan had found someone who seemed to bring out the best in him. I had dated on and off over the years, but being focused on my career and honestly somewhat guarded after years of feeling second best, I had not found the one. My parents never failed to remind me that I was not getting any younger and should settle down soon, even as they celebrated Nathan for finally finding direction in his 30s. As my parents entered their 60s, health issues began to crop up. Dad was diagnosed with high blood pressure and early-stage heart disease. Mom developed arthritis that made it difficult for her to continue her part-time job as a receptionist. Their medical bills increased just as their income decreased, and I found myself helping out more and more financially. I did not mind. I had the means, and they had given me life after all. But I could not help noticing that Nathan, still living under their roof and now employed as a modestly paid graphic designer, was not expected to contribute in the same way. He is saving for his future, Mom would say when I gently suggested that perhaps Nathan could help with the utilities at least. Besides, you make so much more than he does, Woody. It is easier for you. Easier, perhaps. But fair. That question lingered in my mind, though I pushed it away as unworthy. Family helps family. That was how I was raised, and that was what I would continue to do. Or so I thought, until that fateful dinner when everything I thought I knew about family obligation was turned upside down. It was an unusually warm spring evening when I received the call from my mother. "Woody dear, your father, and I would like you to come for dinner this weekend. There is something important we need to discuss about our future planning." Her tone was casual, but held an undercurrent of seriousness that made me immediately rearrange my schedule. "Everything okay, Mom?" I asked, already mentally calculating how much I could spare if they needed financial help again. "Everything is fine, just some decisions we have made that we want to share with you and your brother. Rachel will be there too." That Saturday, I made the 3-hour drive from Seattle to Portland, arriving at the familiar colonial-style house where I grew up. Nathan's car was already in the driveway, a used Audi he had bought recently, stretching his budget to impress Rachel, no doubt. Inside, the scene was warmly domestic. Mom was putting the finishing touches on her signature pot, roast the aroma, bringing back childhood memories. Dad sat in his recliner watching baseball while Nathan and Rachel cuddled on the couch, looking like they had stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. Rachel's diamond engagement ring caught the light as she waved hello. "There he is, the big shot programmer," my dad called out, raising his beer in greeting. "How is the rat race treating you, son?" "It is software engineer, Dad, and it is going well. We just launched a new project last week that is getting great user feedback." I smiled, long past expecting him to understand or show interest in my actual work. Dinner was pleasant enough, filled with the usual family updates. Nathan and Rachel dominated the conversation with tales of their recent weekend trip to wine country and plans for the small graphic design business Nathan hoped to launch someday soon. My parents hung on every word, while my own brief mentions of work were met with polite nods before the subject changed. It was only after Mom's homemade apple pie was served that my father cleared his throat and shifted the conversation. "So kids, your mother and I wanted to talk to you about something important. At our age, it is necessary to have everything in order just in case." My stomach tightened. While my parents were in their 60s and had health issues, I had never really confronted the idea of losing them. "We have finalized our will with the lawyer last month." My mother continued, reaching for my father's hand. "We wanted to be transparent with both of you about our decisions, so there are no surprises later." I nodded, appreciating their foresight. Estate planning made sense, and I was glad they were being proactive. "The house and the majority of our assets will go to Nathan," my father stated matter-of-factly, as if announcing the weather forecast. I blinked, certain I had misheard. "I am sorry, what?" "We are leaving the house, and most of our savings to your brother." My mother repeated, her tone, gentle but firm. "We have thought about this carefully, Woody." I looked at Nathan, who had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable studying his pie with sudden interest. Rachel, on the other hand, was barely concealing a satisfied smile. "May I ask why I managed fighting to keep my voice steady?" My parents exchanged a look before my father answered. "Nathan will have a family someday. He and Rachel will need a place to raise their children, your future nieces and nephews. You are doing so well on your own, Woody. You have your condo, your big salary. Nathan needs this security more than you do." Each word felt like a physical blow, not because of the monetary value, but because of what it represented. A lifetime of being the responsible one, the reliable one, had culminated in being deemed unworthy of inheritance because I had been too successful on my own. "I see," I said quietly. Because what else could I say? Create a scene. Demand my fair share. That was not who I was. "We know you understand, my mother," said, patting my hand. "You have always been so sensible. Plus, my father added, as if offering a consolation prize, we will still need your help with bills and such while we are alive. Medical costs are not getting any cheaper, and the house always needs something fixed. Since you make good money, we will be counting on you for that. The surreal nature of the moment nearly made me laugh. They had just told me I would inherit nothing because I was financially stable, in the same breath as confirming they expected me to continue financially supporting them because I was financially stable. Have you considered selling the house and using that money for your retirement? I suggested, trying to be practical through the hurt. It is a lot of space for just the two of you, and the market is good right now. Rachel spoke up immediately. Oh, that would be such a shame. This house has so much potential. Nathan and I have been talking about how we could update it when, well, you know. She had the decency to not finish the morbid thought. We would never sell our family home, my mother said firmly. This is where you boys grew up. This is where we want our grandchildren to visit us. And eventually, it will be where Nathan and Rachel raise their family. I glanced at my brother, who finally met my eyes with an apologetic look, but said nothing to support me. The message was clear: the future grandchildren that Nathan and Rachel would provide were more important than anything I had done or could do. I need some air, I said, standing abruptly. Excuse me for a minute. Outside on the porch, I took deep breaths of the cool evening air, trying to process what had just happened. The door opened behind me, and for a moment I hoped it was Nathan coming to tell me he disagreed with our parents' decision. Instead, it was Rachel. Woody, I just wanted to make sure you are okay. That was probably a shock. Her voice held a veneer of concern, but her eyes told a different story. There was calculation there, and triumph. I am fine, Rachel. Just needed a moment. We really appreciate how understanding you are, she continued. Nathan feels terrible, but you know how your parents are once they have made up their minds. And they are right, you know. You have done so well for yourself. You do not need their help like Nathan does. Before I could respond, she added, Nathan and I have some great ideas for renovating the house once it is ours. Nothing drastic, just modernizing. Though we might convert your old bedroom into a home gym. I hope that does not make you too nostalgic. With that parting shot, she went back inside, leaving me stunned by her audacity. They were already planning renovations while my parents were still very much alive and living in the house. I stayed for another torturous hour, declining dessert, my appetite gone. As soon as I could politely escape, I made my excuses and left the drive back to Seattle, a blur of confused emotions. The next day, I met my best friend Marcus for lunch and told him everything. That is messed up, man, Marcus said, shaking his head in disbelief. So, let me get this straight. They are giving Nathan everything because he has not gotten his life together, while expecting you to keep supporting them because you did get your life together. That is some backwards logic. They say it is because he will have a family, I clarified, though the distinction did not make it any better. And you will not. Have they asked if you want kids someday? Or do they just assume because you are single now that you will never have a family? Marcus's indignation on my behalf was validating. I honestly do not think they have considered it, I admitted. Nathan has always been the priority. So what are you going to do? I stared into my coffee, contemplating. What can I do? They are my parents. It is their decision who they leave their property to. Sure, but you do not have to keep paying their bills while they plan to give everything to your brother. You are allowed to have boundaries, Woody. Boundaries. The word resonated but felt foreign. In my family, my boundaries had never been respected or even acknowledged. I was the reliable one, the one who always came through. But for the first time, I wondered what would happen if I stopped being so reliable. The 3 months following that dinner were some of the most emotionally turbulent of my life. On the surface, I maintained the status quo. I called my parents weekly, listened to updates about Nathan and Rachel's wedding plans, and responded to financial requests as I always had. But beneath that calm exterior, resentment grew like a stubborn weed, impossible to ignore. The financial requests from my parents increased in both frequency and amount. Dad needed new prescription glasses not covered by insurance. The water heater broke, and needed immediate replacement. Property taxes were higher than they expected. Each time the call would come with an underlying assumption that I would handle it because family helps family, and I was in a position to do so. One particularly frustrating call came on a Tuesday evening while I was working late to meet a project deadline. Woody, the doctor, wants your father to see a specialist about his heart. The referral is for next week, but our copay is going to be $400. We just do not have it right now, with all the wedding expenses. I paused my typing, processing what my mother had just said. Wedding expenses. I thought Nathan and Rachel were paying for their own wedding. This had been mentioned several times, how they were being responsible by financing their own celebration. Well, we are helping a little. They found this beautiful venue, but the deposit was substantial. We could not let them lose it. How much was the deposit? I asked, already dreading the answer. $5,000. But it will be worth every penny. You should see the place, Woody. It has a stunning view of the mountains, and as she continued to describe the perfect venue for Nathan's perfect day, I felt something inside me shift. My father needed a heart specialist, but they had spent money they did not have on a wedding venue, and now they expected me to cover the medical bills. I will transfer the money for Dad's appointment tomorrow, I said, cutting her off. But Mom, we need to talk about this pattern. What pattern, dear? You and Dad spending money you do not have often on Nathan, and then expecting me to cover your essential expenses. There was a pause before she replied, her voice taking on the hurt tone I knew well. I did not realize helping your father with his heart condition was such a burden, or that you were keeping score about what we do for your brother. And just like that, I was the bad guy for even bringing it up. I backpedaled, apologized, and promised to send the money. After hanging up, I sat in my darkened office, the blue light of my monitor illuminating my face, and wondered how I had become so trapped in this dynamic. A week later, Nathan and Rachel announced their official engagement at a family dinner. My parents were ecstatic, immediately offering to host an engagement party despite their supposedly tight finances. Nothing fancy, my father said, just family and close friends, maybe 30 people or so. 30 people with food and drinks was still a significant expense. But I kept my mouth shut, having learned my lesson from the previous conversation. After dinner, Nathan pulled me aside. Hey bro, wanted to ask you something important. For a brief moment, I thought he might acknowledge the unfairness of our parents' will, or thank me for continuing to help them financially. Would you be my best man? The request caught me off guard. Despite everything, Nathan was still my brother, and some small part of me was touched that he wanted me standing beside him. Of course, I agreed, pushing down my conflicted feelings. Awesome. Also, Rachel and I were thinking of having the bachelor party in Vegas. As best man, you would cover that, right? Just a weekend thing. Probably 8 or 10 guys. And there it was, not just asking me to be part of his special day, but immediately following it with a financial expectation. A weekend in Vegas for 10 people would easily run into thousands of dollars. I will need to check my budget, I said cautiously. Things are a bit tight with the condo maintenance fees going up and helping Mom and Dad with their expenses. Nathan looked genuinely surprised. But you make like what, 150 grand a year? How can you be tight? The fact that he knew my approximate salary, but had never once considered that I had my own financial responsibilities and goals, was telling. I do well, but I am not made of money, Nathan. And lately it feels like everyone just expects me to pay for everything without discussion. His expression shifted to one I recognized from childhood, the look he got when he was not getting his way. Wow, I did not realize asking my only brother to help with my bachelor party was such an imposition. Never mind, I will figure something else out. He walked away before I could respond, leaving me feeling like the villain once again. The next week, I learned from my mother that my parents had taken out a home equity loan to help pay for Nathan and Rachel's wedding, which had somehow ballooned from simple and responsible to a $70,000 affair. But what about your retirement, I asked, genuinely concerned. And Dad's medical bills? This is important to us, she replied firmly. Nathan only gets married once. We want it to be special. I wanted to point out that they were jeopardizing their financial security for a single day, but I knew it would fall on deaf ears. Instead, I suggested they speak with a financial advisor. We do not need someone telling us how to manage our money, my father interjected, having picked up the extension. What we need is for you to be supportive of your brother's happiness instead of bean counting. The conversation ended poorly, with my father hanging up in frustration and my mother calling back to tell me I had upset him and needed to apologize. I did not apologize. Instead, I found a therapist who specialized in family dynamics and made an appointment. It was time to understand why I continued to participate in a relationship that caused me so much pain. Dr. Levine was a calm, insightful woman in her 50s who listened to my family history without judgment. What you are describing sounds like a classic case of family role assignment, she explained after our second session. You were assigned the role of the responsible one, while your brother was the one who needs help. These roles get reinforced over decades until they seem like fixed personality traits rather than family dynamics. But how do I change it? I asked. Every time I try to establish boundaries, I am made to feel selfish or cruel. That is because you are disrupting a system that everyone else is comfortable with. When you change your role, it forces others to change theirs, and that creates resistance. She leaned forward. The question is, are you willing to tolerate their discomfort to create a healthier dynamic for yourself? That question stayed with me as I began the difficult work of establishing boundaries. I started small, not responding immediately to non-emergency requests for money. I declined to attend a cake tasting for Nathan's wedding that would have required me to take a day off work. I began to say I will need to think about that instead of automatically agreeing to financial requests. The response was immediate and negative. My parents did not understand why I was suddenly being difficult and distant. Nathan accused me of being jealous of his happiness. Even extended family members were recruited to call and ask why I was causing problems during this special time. The pressure was intense, and my work began to suffer. I missed deadlines, something that had never happened before. My manager called me in for a talk about my performance, and I realized how much the family drama was affecting every aspect of my life. I need to get this under control, I told Dr. Levine during our next session, but every time I try to set boundaries, the pushback is overwhelming. That is because you have not been clear enough about your new limits, she suggested. You have been trying to ease into boundary setting, but sometimes a clearer line needs to be drawn. Little did I know that the opportunity to draw that line would present itself sooner than I expected in the form of a text message about an overdue electric bill. I had been working for weeks to establish what Dr. Levine called healthy boundaries with my family. It was harder than it sounded. Decades of patterns do not change overnight, and every small stand I took felt like a betrayal of the identity I had built as the reliable son, the one who could always be counted on. Still, I was making progress. I had started saying no to non-emergency requests. I had set up a separate email address for family communications so that I could check it when I was emotionally prepared rather than having requests pop up in my main inbox during the workday. I had even started turning my phone off during important meetings, something I had never done before out of fear of missing an urgent family need. That Tuesday started like any other. I had a critical presentation to our company's biggest client pitching a new software solution that I had helped design. The conference room was packed with executives from both companies, and as the technical lead, I would be fielding most of the questions after my boss gave the initial overview. My phone was set to Do Not Disturb, but I had forgotten to disable the setting that allowed repeated calls from the same number to come through, a feature I had enabled for genuine family emergencies. As I was in the middle of explaining a particularly complex aspect of the software architecture, my phone began to vibrate repeatedly in my pocket. "Excuse me," I said, feeling my face flush with embarrassment, as I quickly silenced it. "Please continue with your questions." 10 minutes later, it happened again. And again 5 minutes after that. By the fourth call, the client's CTO was giving me a pointed look and my boss was visibly annoyed. "I apologize, but I need to step out for just a moment to address what appears to be an urgent situation," I said, my heart racing with a mix of professional mortification and personal anxiety. What if something had happened to my father? His heart condition had been worse lately. In the hallway, I saw 6 missed calls from my mother and 2 from my father. As I was about to call back, a text message came through Electric's past due. "You better handle it. Need $350 today, or they shut it off. Not please help, not I hate to ask, not even a greeting. Just a demand as if I were a human ATM rather than a son with his own life and responsibilities. I called anyway, concern, still outweighing irritation. My mother answered on the first ring. Finally, did you get my message? They are going to shut off the power if we do not pay by 4 o'clock. I need you to transfer the money right away. Mom, I am in the middle of an important client meeting. What happened to the money I sent last week for the utilities? I kept my voice low, aware of the conference room just feet away. We had to use that for the deposit on the flowers for the wedding. Rachel found this amazing florist, but they required payment up front. And you used the utility money for wedding flowers. I interrupted, disbelief momentarily overriding my usual restraint. Do not take that tone with me, Woody. This is your brother's special day we are talking about. Now, about the electric bill. I cannot talk about this right now. I am literally in the middle of a presentation that could determine whether our company keeps its biggest client. This is an emergency. They will shut off the power in 3 hours. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and made a decision. It is not an emergency, Mom. It is a consequence of poor financial planning. I have to go back to my meeting now. I hung up before she could respond and turned my phone completely off. My hands were shaking as I returned to the conference room, but I managed to get through the rest of the presentation. Afterward, my boss pulled me aside. Everything okay? That is not like you to step out during a presentation. I considered giving a vague answer, but something in me had shifted. Family drama. I am dealing with it. It will not happen again. He nodded, seemingly satisfied with my directness. Good. Because the client was impressed with your work. We are likely to get the contract. Under normal circumstances, this news would have elated me. But as I turned my phone back on and saw the barrage of missed calls, voicemails, and increasingly angry texts, I felt only a deep weariness. I listened to the first voicemail from my father. Your mother told me you refused to help with the electric bill. I do not know what has gotten into you lately, but this is unacceptable. We could be sitting in the dark tonight because you are suddenly too selfish to help your family. Call me back immediately. The second voicemail was from Nathan. Dude, what the hell? Mom's crying because you won't help with the bills. I know you are mad about the will thing, but taking it out on them is low even for you lately. There were 3 more similar messages, each one twisting the knife deeper, painting me as the villain for not dropping everything to fix a problem they had created by prioritizing wedding flowers over basic utilities. As I sat in my car in the parking garage staring at my phone, something crystallized in my mind. This was not about the $350. It was about respect, consideration, and the assumption that my time, money, and boundaries were less important than their wants. Not even their needs, but their wants. A text message from my mother came through. We borrowed from neighbor. No thanks to you. Your father too upset to talk to you now. This was the pattern. Create a crisis demand. I fix it, then make me feel guilty when I could not or did not. If I did help, there was minimal gratitude because it was simply expected. If I did not, I was punished with guilt and emotional withdrawal. I thought about what Dr. Levine had said about disrupting comfortable systems. Everyone in my family was comfortable with me being the fixer, the provider, the reliable one, who asked for nothing in return. The moment I stepped out of that role, the system fought to push me back into it. For the first time, I could see the pattern with perfect clarity, and with that clarity came a calm resolve. I put my phone down, started my car, and drove home, formulating my response. That evening, after a long walk to clear my head, I sat down and composed a text message to my family group chat, which included my parents and Nathan. I need to be clear about something. I love you all, but I will not be providing financial support anymore, unless it is for a genuine emergency like a health crisis. The pattern of spending money on non-essentials and then expecting me to cover the basics needs to stop. I am happy to help create a budget that works with your income, but I will not continue enabling financial decisions that put your stability at risk. This is not up for debate or negotiation. I hope you can respect this boundary. I hit send before I could second-guess myself, then turned off my phone and went to bed, knowing that the fallout would be significant, but also feeling for the first time in years that I was standing up for my own worth. The response to my boundary-setting text was swift and predictable. My phone began ringing almost immediately after I turned it back on the next morning. I let the calls go to voicemail, needing time to prepare myself emotionally for the confrontation I knew was coming. My father's message was first, "Call me immediately. We need to discuss your ridiculous text from last night." His voice was tight with anger. My mother took a different approach. "Woody, honey, I do not know what has gotten into you lately. We are hurt that you would think we are taking advantage, after everything we have done for you." Nathan's message was the most surprising. "Hey man, I think we need to talk. Parents are freaking out. Maybe we can work something out that makes everyone happy." I took my time responding, following Dr. Levine's advice to pause and consider my words carefully rather than reacting emotionally. Finally, I called my parents' house, putting the phone on speaker so I could pace around my living room during what I knew would be a difficult conversation. "So you have decided to grace us with a call," my father said by way of greeting. I wanted to give everyone time to process what I said before we talked. I replied, keeping my voice calm and neutral. "Process? There is nothing to process. You have made it clear that you do not care about this family anymore." "That is not true, Dad. I care deeply about all of you. That is why I am concerned about the financial decisions being made." "We do not need you monitoring our spending like we are children," my mother interjected. "We are your parents, not the other way around." "I know that. But when you consistently spend money on non-essentials and then cannot pay your basic bills, it affects me, because I am the one you call to bail you out. So the one time we ask for help with the electric, you decide to cut us off completely." My father's voice rose. "After everything we have done for you," I took a deep breath. "It is not one time, Dad. It is a pattern. The utility money going to wedding flowers is just one example. Remember last month when the property tax was due, but you had spent the money on a deposit for Nathan's honeymoon? That is different. That is family. That is important. And having electricity is not important," I countered. "Do not be smart with me," my father snapped. "You know what I mean. These are special circumstances. Once the wedding is over, things will go back to normal." "That is just it, Dad. I do not want things to go back to normal. Normal has not been working for me." There was a pause before my mother spoke, her voice softening to that wounded tone I knew so well. "What are you saying, Woody? That you do not want to help your family anymore? That you do not care if we struggle?" "I am saying I want to help in ways that actually solve problems, not just put band-aids on them. I offered to help create a budget that works with your income. I am happy to help find resources for financial planning, but I will not keep transferring money that gets misused." "So that is it, an ultimatum." My father's voice had gone cold. "It is a boundary, Dad. One I need for my own well-being." "Well, if that is how you feel, maybe we should respect your boundary completely. Maybe we should stop bothering you with our problems at all. No more weekly calls. No more family dinners. Would that make you happy, Woody?" The emotional manipulation was so transparent, it almost made me laugh, but the pain beneath it was real. They truly could not conceive of a relationship with me that did not involve financial dependence. That is not what I want at all. I want a relationship based on mutual respect, not one where I am valued primarily for my wallet. "How dare you," my mother gasped. "We have never thought of you that way. We love you because you are our son." "Then prove it," I challenged gently. "Love me enough to respect the boundaries I need." The conversation circled for another hour, with moments of progress followed by retreats into old patterns. In the end, we reached an uneasy stalemate. They did not accept my position, but they could not deny the firmness of my resolve. Later that evening, Nathan called. That was intense with Mom and Dad earlier. "You heard it all. I was at their house fixing Dad's computer." "Heard enough." There was an awkward pause. "Look, I get that you are frustrated, but could you maybe make an exception for the wedding stuff? It means a lot to them. And, honestly, to me, too. I closed my eyes, suddenly tired. Nathan, do you understand that they took out a home equity loan they cannot afford to pay for your wedding? That they are choosing wedding flowers over keeping the lights on? How is that sustainable? When you put it that way. He trailed off. I guess I have not been paying enough attention to their finances. Because you have not had to. I have been the safety net. Another pause. I never asked you to be. No, but you have benefited from it. And now you are asking me to make an exception, which is just another way of asking me to continue being the safety net. That is not fair, Woody. Maybe not. But neither is expecting me to keep financing everyone's choices while being excluded from the inheritance because, and I quote, "You will have a family someday and need it more." The silence that followed told me I had hit a nerve. They told you that Nathan finally asked, his voice smaller. You were there, Nathan. At the dinner. Yeah, but I guess I did not think about how that would feel from your perspective. It was the first acknowledgement from anyone in my family that the situation might be unfair to me, a small crack in the unified front. Look, I said, softening my tone, I am not trying to hurt anyone. I just need things to change. I get it. Let me talk to Rachel about scaling back some of the wedding stuff. Maybe we do not need the ice sculpture or the deluxe open bar. It was a tiny concession, but it felt like progress. Thanks, Nathan. That would help. The following weeks were tense. My parents' communication with me became formal and infrequent. When we did speak, there was a wounded quality to their interactions, as if they were martyrs suffering through my cruelty. Nathan made some efforts to reduce wedding costs, but met resistance from Rachel, who had her heart set on the perfect day she had been planning. 3 weeks after my stand, I received a text from my mother. Sunday dinner this week. 5 o'clock. Important family discussion. Part of me hoped this meant they had reflected on the situation and were ready to acknowledge my perspective. The optimistic part of me imagined a productive conversation about financial boundaries and mutual respect. I should have known better. When I arrived at my parents' house that Sunday, the ambush was immediately apparent. Not only were my parents and Nathan present, but also Rachel, my mother's sister, Aunt Linda, and my father's brother, Uncle Steve. What is this? I asked, as I took in the assembled group, all wearing expressions of concern. An intervention, my father declared. We are worried about you, Woody. This sudden change in behavior, cutting off your family financially. It is not like you. We think you might be depressed, my mother added, her voice dripping with fake concern. Or maybe it is burnout from work. We want to help you get back to your old self. For a moment I was speechless at the audacity. They had gathered reinforcements to pressure me back into my role as family ATM, and were framing it as concern for my mental health. Uncle Steve leaned forward. Your dad tells me you have been refusing to help with their bills lately. That does not sound like the nephew I know. Did he also tell you they spent their utility money on wedding flowers? I asked calmly. Steve looked confused. Well, no, but... Or that they took out a home equity loan they cannot afford to pay for an extravagant wedding, while Dad needs ongoing medical care for his heart condition. Now, wait just a minute, my father interrupted. You are making us sound irresponsible. If the shoe fits, Dad. Rachel spoke up, her voice sickly sweet. Woody, we all understand you are under stress. And perhaps you feel a bit left out with all the wedding excitement. But taking it out on your parents is not the answer. I looked around the room at these people who claimed to love me but could not respect the simplest boundary. A strange calm came over me. I am not going to participate in this manipulation, I said, standing up. When you are ready to have an honest conversation about financial responsibility and mutual respect, let me know. Until then, I am going to step back from family gatherings. If you walk out that door, do not bother coming back. My father threatened, his face reddening. Robert, my mother gasped. I mean it. If he cannot be bothered to help his family, then he is no son of mine. The ultimatum hung in the air. In the past, it would have worked. The fear of losing my family's love would have sent me scrambling to comply. But now I saw it for what it was, a desperate attempt to regain control. I love you all, I said quietly. But I will not be manipulated or guilted anymore. My boundary stands. I walked out, ignoring the calls of woody wait from my mother and aunt. The spring air felt cool on my face. As I made my way to my car, a strange mixture of grief and liberation washing over me. As I was about to drive away, Nathan came running out of the house. "Woody, hold up." I rolled down my window, bracing for more guilt or anger. "That was messed up in there," he said, surprising me. "The ambush thing. Not cool." "No, it was not." He shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I did not know they were planning that. I thought it was just going to be a regular dinner." I studied my brother's face, trying to gauge his sincerity. "Okay, for what it is worth, I get why you are upset. The will thing, the constant financial demands. It is a lot. It is not just about the money, Nathan. It is about respect. About acknowledging that I have a life and needs, too." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I can see that now. I think I have been wrapped up in my own stuff and not really seeing the bigger picture." It was the most insightful thing I had ever heard my brother say. "Thanks for saying that." "Do not thank me. I should have spoken up sooner." He glanced back at the house. "They are pretty upset in there." "I know. But I cannot keep setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm." Nathan cracked a small smile. "That is pretty deep, bro." "Therapy," I explained with a shrug. "It helps. Maybe I should try it sometime." He seemed to mean it. "Drive safe, okay? And I will talk to them. Try to make them see your side a bit." As I drove away, I felt a small flicker of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, this painful rupture might eventually lead to something healthier for all of us. The 3 months following the intervention were both the most difficult and the most liberating of my adult life. After walking out of my parents' house that day, I made a conscious decision to prioritize my own well-being for perhaps the first time ever. Contact with my family dwindled to almost nothing. My father maintained his stance that I was selfish and ungrateful. My mother sent occasional texts that alternated between guilt trips. "Your father's blood pressure is worse, probably from the stress you've caused. And olive branches, I made your favorite apple pie today and thought of you." I responded politely but briefly to the latter and not at all to the former. Nathan reached out more frequently, usually just checking in with casual texts about sports or asking tech advice. He never directly mentioned the family drama, but occasionally he would drop hints that our parents were struggling financially without my support. I appreciated that he did not explicitly ask me to resume my role as the family bank. Dr. Levine helped me process the complex emotions of this period. The guilt that still surfaced, despite my intellectual understanding that I had done nothing wrong. The grief for the family relationship I had always wanted but never truly had. The anger at years of being taken for granted. And most surprisingly, the fear of who I might be if I was not the responsible caretaker son. "Your identity has been so wrapped up in being the reliable one, the fixer," she observed during one particularly insightful session. "Now you have the opportunity to discover who Woody is beyond that role." That question, who was I beyond my family's expectations, became the focus of my personal journey. I had always been so busy meeting others' needs that I had never fully explored my own interests and desires. I started small. I joined a local hiking group that met on weekends, something I had always wanted to do but had never prioritized, because weekends were often spent helping my parents with house projects or attending family functions. The physical exertion of climbing mountain trails was cathartic, and the casual friendships that formed along the way helped fill the social void left by my family estrangement. I also began to explore my creative side, taking a woodworking class at a community center. There was something deeply satisfying about transforming raw materials into functional art with my hands so different from the digital world I inhabited professionally. My first project was a simple but elegant coffee table that now sits in my living room, a daily reminder of my capacity to create something beautiful for myself. At work, freed from the constant interruptions of family crises, my performance improved dramatically. I was more focused, more innovative, and more present. My boss noticed the change. "Whatever you did to handle that family situation, it is working," he commented, after I successfully led a particularly challenging project. You seem more centered. The biggest change came through my volunteer work. I had always donated money to various causes, but had never given my time, always too busy putting out family fires. Now I began volunteering at a local coding academy for underprivileged youth, teaching basic programming skills to teenagers who might otherwise never be exposed to tech careers. It was at one of these weekend workshops that I met Haley. She was another volunteer, a graphic designer with a quick wit and an infectious laugh who challenged the kids to think about user experience alongside coding functionality. We struck up a conversation during a coffee break, and something just clicked. Our first date was at a small Ethiopian restaurant she knew. Our second was a kayaking trip on Lake Union. By the third, I knew there was something special developing between us. Haley was independent and secure in herself, with healthy family relationships that showed me what mutual respect looked like. She listened when I eventually shared my family situation, offering empathy without advice. It sounds like you are doing the hard but necessary work of establishing healthy boundaries, she said. That takes courage. With Haley, I never felt like a walking wallet or a problem solver. I was valued for my thoughts, my humor, my company. It was refreshingly equal in a way I had never experienced in a close relationship before. As my personal life blossomed, I also reconnected with extended family members I had lost touch with over the years. My cousin Michael, who had similarly distanced himself from the family dynamics, reached out after hearing about my stand through the family grapevine. Been there, he said when we met for drinks. Aunt Martha and Uncle Robert did the same financial dependency dance with my mom for years before she finally cut them off. They always have a favorite they spoil and a responsible one they leech from. It is their pattern. Hearing that my experience was not unique was both validating and sad. It suggested the pattern was deeply ingrained and unlikely to change without significant self-reflection on my parents' part. 4 months after the intervention, I received an unexpected call from Nathan. We had maintained our casual contact, but this call had a different tone from the start. Hey, Woody, got a minute to talk seriously? Sure. Everything okay? He sighed heavily. Not really. Mom and Dad are really struggling without your financial help. They have maxed out their credit cards, they are behind on the property taxes, and the bank is making noise about the missed home equity loan payments. I steeled myself for the guilt trip, the implied request for me to resume my role as the financial safety net. But Nathan surprised me. And before you think I am calling to ask you to bail them out again, I am not. I actually think you were right all along. They need to face the consequences of their choices and figure out a sustainable way to live on their actual income. I was momentarily speechless. That is, not what I expected you to say. Yeah, well, I have been doing some thinking. And some growing up, probably long overdue. He paused. Rachel and I broke up. What happened, Rachel had seemed so permanently affixed to Nathan's future that I could not imagine them apart. About a month ago, after Mom and Dad told us they could not contribute to the wedding anymore because of their financial situation, Rachel started pushing me to ask you for the money. When I refused, she suggested I repair the relationship with you specifically to get access to your funds again. It opened my eyes to what she really valued about me. Or rather, about my family connections. I am sorry, Nathan. That must have been painful. It was at first. But honestly, it was also clarifying. Like really clarifying. Made me look at a lot of patterns in my life, where I have benefited from others picking up my slack. It was the most self-aware I had ever heard my brother sound. That is some serious introspection. Yeah, well, having your fiancée reveal she was more interested in your brother's money than in you will do that to a guy. He gave a rueful laugh. Anyway, I have been talking to Mom and Dad a lot about their situation. I finally convinced them to consider selling the house. Really? They were so dead set against that. They still are, honestly. But I told them I do not want it anymore. That changed the equation for them. They have been holding on to it, mainly because they thought I needed it for my future family. Wow. The implications of this shift were significant. Without the emotional attachment to keeping the house for Nathan, my parents might finally make the financially sound choice to downsize. There is more, Nathan continued. I told them I think they should split whatever assets they have equally between us in their will. It is the right thing to do. I had to sit down. After all this time, to have my brother not only understand, but advocate for fairness on my behalf was overwhelming. Thank you, I managed. That means a lot. Do not thank me for basic decency. That should have been there all along. He sounded genuinely remorseful. Look, they are still resistant to the idea. They have all these justifications about how you do not need it like I do. But I am working on them. I appreciate that, but honestly, the will is secondary at this point. What matters more is being respected and valued for who I am, not what I can provide. I get that now. And I owe you an apology for not seeing it sooner, for being part of the problem. We talked for almost 2 hours that night, the most honest conversation we had ever had. Nathan shared that he had started therapy too, inspired in part by the changes he had seen in me. He had also found a better paying job and moved into his own apartment, taking his first real steps toward independence at 32. A week later, Nathan called again. Mom and Dad want to talk to you. They are not ready to completely admit they were wrong, but they are open to your offer to help with financial planning instead of just giving them money. I was cautious but hopeful. That is a start. They are scared, Woody. The reality of their financial situation is finally sinking in, and it is not pretty. They need help, just not the kind they have been asking for. I will reach out to them, I promised, and I did, setting up a meeting with a financial advisor friend who specialized in retirement planning for the following week. It was a small step, but perhaps the beginning of a new, healthier chapter for all of us. 6 months after that first financial planning meeting with my parents, life had shifted in ways I never could have anticipated. The journey had not been smooth or straightforward, but genuine progress had been made on multiple fronts. My relationship with Haley had deepened into something truly special. We had recently moved in together, merging our lives with a surprising ease that spoke to our compatibility. She had met my family a few times now, maintaining a warm but appropriately boundaried relationship with them that I both admired and tried to emulate. You look happy, she commented one evening, as we sat on our balcony watching the sunset over the Seattle skyline. More at peace than when we first met. I am, I agreed, taking her hand. Having healthy relationships will do that for a person. Our conversation was interrupted by a call from Nathan. Since his breakup with Rachel, we had grown closer than we had been since childhood. He had embraced therapy with surprising enthusiasm and was doing the hard work of examining the family patterns that had shaped both of us. Hey, got news, he said when I answered. Big news, actually. Can you do a video call? I want to see your face for this. Curious, I switched to video with Haley leaning in beside me. Nathan's face appeared on screen, looking more mature somehow than he had even a year ago. So I had a long talk with Mom and Dad yesterday, he began, about the house and the will situation. I braced myself, uncertain where this was going. I told them I absolutely refused to accept the house or any unequal inheritance. That either everything gets split 50-50 between us, or I will donate my entire portion to charity. Wow, I said, genuinely surprised by his firmness. How did they take that? About how you would expect at first. Dad got all red-faced and talked about ungrateful children. Mom cried. He rolled his eyes good-naturedly. But then something shifted. After the drama died down, Dad actually admitted that the financial advisor you connected them with has been telling them the same thing all along. That they should sell the house and use the proceeds for a comfortable retirement. And they are considering it. I tried not to sound too hopeful. Better than considering. They have decided to do it. They are meeting with a realtor next week. Nathan's face broke into a grin. And they have agreed to change the will. Equal splits, Woody, as it always should have been. A complex wave of emotions washed over me. Vindication, relief, but also a certain sadness that it had taken such extreme measures to reach this point. That is great news, Nathan. Really. There is more. Dad wants to talk to you. He is here with me now. Is that okay? Before I could answer, my father's face appeared on screen, looking older and more subdued than I remembered. Woody. He nodded formally. Your brother tells me you are doing well. I am, Dad. How are you? He cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Better now that we have a plan. That financial advisor you sent us to, she has been a godsend. Helped us understand what we need to do to live within our means. I am glad to hear that. An awkward silence fell until my father spoke again, his voice gruff with emotion. I owe you an apology, son. We both do, your mother and I. We took advantage of your generosity for years, took you for granted. It was not right. I had imagined this moment many times, but now that it was happening, I found myself unexpectedly moved. Thank you for saying that, Dad. The thing is, he continued, we got so used to thinking of you as the strong one, the capable one, that we stopped seeing how our demands were affecting you. We convinced ourselves that because you were successful, you did not need anything from us. Not money, not emotional support, not even basic fairness. It was perhaps the most insightful thing I had ever heard my father say. That is exactly it, Dad. Well, I want you to know we are getting our house in order, literally and figuratively. The place is too big for us anyway, has been for years. We are looking at some nice condos closer to town, easier to maintain. That sounds like a smart move. And about the will, he hesitated. We have already called our lawyer. Everything will be split equally. It should have been that way from the start. I appreciate that, Dad. But honestly, this was never really about the money or the inheritance. I know that now. It was about respect. About being valued as a son, not as a checkbook. He shook his head. It should not have taken nearly losing you from our lives to figure that out. The conversation continued for nearly an hour. My mother joined at one point, adding her own tearful apology. They shared their plans for downsizing, for living more responsibly within their means. They asked genuine questions about my life, my work, Haley. For perhaps the first time, they seemed interested in me as a person rather than as a resource. When we finally said goodbye, I felt a weight lift that I had not even realized I was still carrying. That was huge, Haley said, wrapping her arms around me. Are you okay? Better than okay, I replied, surprising myself with how true it was. I feel free. Over the next few months, my parents followed through on their promises. They sold the house for a good price in the hot Portland market and purchased a comfortable 2-bedroom condo in a retirement community with activities and amenities they loved. With the remaining proceeds, they paid off their debts and established a retirement fund that, while not lavish, was adequate for their needs when combined with Social Security. Our relationship continued to heal, albeit with occasional backsliding into old patterns that required gentle but firm correction. They still sometimes slipped and asked for financial help with non-essentials, but now accepted no, without drama when it came. For genuine emergencies, I was happy to help, knowing it was now a choice rather than an expectation. Nathan flourished in his newfound independence. He had been promoted at work and was dating casually, in no rush to replace Rachel. He had taken up rock climbing and lost 20 pounds, looking healthier than he had in years. You know what the weird thing is, he said during one of our now regular video game sessions online. I think I resented you for years without realizing it. Resented me. Why? Because everyone expected so little of me. It was like they had decided early on that I was not capable of real responsibility or success, so why try? You were the golden child in that way, even if they treated me like the favorite. I had never considered that perspective, that Nathan might have felt as trapped in his role as I had in mine. Family dynamics are messed up, I offered. Tell me about it. But hey, we broke the cycle. That counts for something. As for me, the personal growth that had begun as a defensive measure had blossomed into genuine transformation. I was more assertive at work, more authentic in my relationships, more connected to my own needs and desires. Haley and I were talking about marriage, approaching the topic as equal partners planning a shared future. My therapist, Dr. Levine, had helped me see that the most important lesson from all of this was not about family dynamics or inheritance or even boundaries, though those were all important. It was about self-worth, recognizing that I had inherent value as a person, not just as a provider or problem solver. You have always been worthy of respect and consideration, she told me in our final session together. The difference now is that you know it too. That knowledge changed everything. It allowed me to love my family while still protecting myself from harmful patterns. It enabled me to build healthy reciprocal relationships instead of one-sided ones. It gave me the freedom to sometimes put myself first without guilt or shame. The irony is that by refusing to keep setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm, I ultimately helped my entire family find healthier ways to generate their own heat. My parents were more financially stable than they had been in years. Nathan was becoming the independent adult he had always been capable of being. And I was finally free of the exhausting role of family savior. If you have ever found yourself trapped in the role of family ATM or emotional caretaker, know that you can break free without breaking those relationships, though it may take time and tremendous courage. Remember that love should never require you to diminish yourself, and that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for everyone, including yourself, is to stand firmly in your own worth. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it resonated with you in any way, please leave a comment sharing your own experience with family dynamics or boundary setting. Have you ever had to take a difficult stand with loved ones? How did it turn out? Hit the like button. If this story helped you feel less alone, subscribe for more real-life experiences, and share with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to value themselves. Remember, true family supports your growth, not just their needs.